The wind on Xylos didn't whisper, it scraped. It was a dry, grit-laden breath that flowed endlessly over the dunes, polishing bone-white rock and carving the landscape into a desolate masterpiece. Kalen's boots sank with a soft crunch into the sand, the sound swallowed by the immense, silent expanse. His environmental suit hummed a low, steady counterpoint to the void, a tiny bastion of technology against a world that offered nothing but indifference. He was here to map mineral deposits, a solitary contract for a corporation that valued data over drama. This was a dead world and he preferred it that way. The silence was a balm. A glint of something unnatural caught his eye, a sharp contrast to the monotonous ochre and white. Not mineral. It was a shard of polished ceramite, the color of a twilight sky. His scanner registered faint, complex alloys. Debris? He moved closer, his curiosity a professional tick. The object wasn't alone. It was attached to a form, small and slender, almost entirely buried in the sand. A drone, perhaps. A broken probe. Then he saw the limb. It was too articulated, too delicate for a machine. 3 slender digits curled inward. His breath hitched. He dropped to his knees, his gloves frantically brushing away the abrasive grains. He uncovered a torso clad in the same fine, fractured armor. A face. It was vulpine with large, dark eyes that were closed and a short muzzle. The skin was a soft, velvety gray, and across it intricate patterns of bioluminescence pulsed with a terrifying weakness, a faint, sputtering blue light against the encroaching dark. A Threnodian. The reclusive, technologically sublime Threnodians. His training erupted in his mind like a klaxon. Observe. Record. Do not interfere. First contact protocols are for authorized personnel only. The risk of biological contamination is catastrophic. His ship's AI, synced to his helmet, displayed a scrolling red text of the same warnings. This was a career-ending, life-imprisoning offense. The child, it was clearly a juvenile, let out a shuddering breath. A tiny wisp of sand puffed from her nostrils. Her eyes opened. They held no fear, no plea. Only a deep, ancient exhaustion, a resignation to the inevitable. She had been waiting here for the sand to take her. The last flicker of her light was a final, silent acceptance. Kalen's hands moved before his mind could protest further. He scooped her up. She was impossibly light, a bundle of fragile bones and fading warmth. He cradled her against his chest plate, turning his back on the wind and striding, then running toward the distant arrowhead shape of his shuttle. The sand, which had been so eager to claim her, now seemed to clutch at his boots, trying to pull them both down. Inside the shuttle's sterile airlock, he tore off his helmet. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and his own sharp sweat. He laid the small form on the medbay cot, its white surface a stark contrast to her dusty gray. His med scanner whirred, its laser dancing over her. The readouts were a mess of crimson warnings. Severe dehydration. Extreme hypothermia. And something else, a complex, aggressive foreign agent attacking her at a cellular level. A pathogen. He grabbed a human-specific hypospray of broad-spectrum antibiotics, then stopped, his hand trembling. It was useless. It might even be poison to her. Her light was guttering, the blue patterns dimming to a faint, ghostly gray. She was a candle in the last moments before the flame winks out. He was going to lose her. Right here, in the one place that should have offered sanctuary, his tools were nothing but blunt instruments. He was a geologist watching a masterpiece dissolve in acid, powerless to stop it. The soft chime of an incoming priority message from the corporation flashed on his comm screen. He didn't read it. His eyes were locked on the dying child. He had pulled her from the sand only to watch her perish in the light. Her chest barely rose. The last glimmer of light on her cheek faded, leaving only gray. Then, a single final pulse of blue light traveled from her temple to her chin, a final silent word in a language he could not hear. The shuttle's internal lights flickered, and a low hum he'd never heard before resonated through the deck plates. Kalen's fingers flew across the console, overriding one safety protocol after another. The ship's AI protested with soft, insistent chimes he ignored. He had to understand the enemy. The cellular analysis finally completed, its results painting a bizarre picture. The pathogen wasn't organic in any way he recognized. Its structure was crystalline, a silicon-based lattice that hijacked biological processes, slowly converting them, turning living tissue into inert, sandy stone. It was a disease of the world itself. The dunes of Xylos weren't just a place to die, they were the agent of death. Her own advanced biology, likely carbon-based like his, had no defense against this mineral plague. This changed everything. He couldn't fight it with medicine, but he could fight it with mechanics. He raced to the engineering locker, pulling out a portable water purifier and a nutrient mixer meant for long-term soil analysis. He cannibalized tubing from a spare coolant line. His creation was ugly, a mess of plastic and seals, but it was a start. A crude, external filtration and hydration system. He filled a bag with a saline solution and hooked the line to a vein in her arm, one the scanner had identified as a major circulatory conduit. The moment the needle pricked her skin, her whole body went rigid. A spike of panicked, white light flashed across her body. She tried to pull away, a weak, mewling sound escaping her throat. Her large, dark eyes were wide with a primal fear. "Shoo," Kalen said, his voice low and calm, a sound he hardly used himself. He held his hands up, empty. "It's okay. It's to help." He moved with an exaggerated slowness, reaching for a cup of water. He brought it to his own lips, took a small sip, then held it out to her. He dipped a finger in the water and gently touched it to her parched lips. She flinched, but the water was a siren's call. Her long, dark tongue flicked out, tasting the moisture. Her eyes remained fixed on his. He repeated the gesture, again and again, each time her movements becoming less frantic, more deliberate. The strobing panic on her skin softened into a slow, uncertain ripple. After a long moment, she allowed him to hold the cup to her mouth, and she drank small, desperate sips. He worked through the ship's night cycle, monitoring the drip, adjusting the flow. He found a cleaning cloth, dampened it with warm water, and carefully wiped the caked sand from her face and arms. With each gentle stroke, her luminescence steadied. The patterns began to pulse in a slow, rhythmic cadence, like a calm heartbeat made of light. It was no longer the frantic scream of panic, but a quiet, trusting song. He found himself talking to her, not in complex sentences, but in simple, reassuring sounds. "You're safe now. The sand can't have you." He didn't know if she understood the words, but she seemed to understand the tone, the cadence of care. He mentally named her Lumo for the soft, hopeful light she now emitted. Another priority message flashed on his screen, this one tagged with a higher urgency code. A reminder of the non-interference directive, the astronomical fines, the potential for permanent exile from sanctioned space. The words were cold, impersonal, absolute. They represented the galaxy he knew, a place of rules and consequences. He looked at Lumo. Her light pulsed gently in the dimmed lights of the medbay. She had shifted in her sleep, her body curling into a small, vulnerable ball. Her three-fingered hand, so alien and yet so childlike, had relaxed. It lay open on the white sheet, and as he watched, her fingers twitched, then slowly curled inward, until they were wrapped tightly around his thumb where it rested on the cot's edge. The contact was electric. It was a bond, silent and profound. Kalen took a deep breath, reached for the console, and deleted the corporate message without reading another word. The choice was made. He would not give her back to the sand. A sharp, insistent beeping shattered the quiet. Kalen jolted awake in his pilot's chair. The long-range sensor display was a blaze of orange. A contact. And it was moving fast, on a direct intercept course. The signature was unlike any human design, sleek, predatory, and radiating a power output that dwarfed his own shuttle. Lumo, who had been sleeping peacefully on a nest of blankets he'd made for her, was suddenly awake. Her body went taut. A terrified, silent shriek of light, a blinding, staccato flash of red and white, erupted across her skin. She scrambled backward, pressing herself into the corner, her eyes fixed on the scanner screen as if she could see the ship itself through the hull. "They've found me," the thought slammed into Kalen's mind, clear and cold and not his own. He stared at her, then back at the screen. This wasn't a rescue party. Her terror was too absolute, too visceral. This was the source of her abandonment. He slammed his hands on the console. "Brace!" he yelled, though she couldn't understand the word. The engines whined to life. He pulled back on the controls, and the shuttle shot vertically from the canyon floor just as a lance of searing orange plasma vaporized the rock where they had been hidden. The force of the ascent threw him back in his seat. Lumo tumbled from her corner with a soft cry. The pursuit was on. He pushed the shuttle to its limits, diving into a labyrinth of deep, winding canyons, using the terrain as his only shield. The Threnodian ship was faster, more powerful, but his shuttle was smaller, more agile. He flew on instinct, weaving between monolithic stone pillars, the enemy's plasma fire painting the canyon walls in brief, violent sunsets. "Come on, think," he growled, checking his scanners. Comms were jammed. The long-range drive was disabled, its initiator circuits fried by some kind of targeted pulse. They were trapped in the Xylo system, a mouse being toyed with by a hawk. A wave of images, sharp and painful, flooded his mind. Not words but impressions. A sterile, silver room. Other young Threnodians, their lights dull. A tall, severe-looking Threnodian in ornate armor, touching a child who coughed black dust. The child was taken away. The word culling echoed not as a sound but as a cold, final concept. Elwes, watching from a corner, trying to hide the first telltale flicker of gray at her own fingertips. The truth was a cold stone in his gut. It wasn't just abandonment. It was a purge. Her people, for all their advancement, practiced a ruthless form of eugenics. The sand plague was a death sentence, and they were the executioners ensuring the impure never returned. The ship behind them wasn't just a hunter, it was a cleaner tying up a loose end. A plasma blast sheared off a rock spire just to their port side. The shockwave hit the shuttle like a physical blow. Alarms shrieked. The console flashed a cascade of damage reports: port stabilizer, hull integrity, life support fluctuation. They were running out of time, out of space, out of luck. He pulled the shuddering shuttle into a sharp turn, deeper into the canyon's shadowy heart. He had one chance, a desperate, stupid plan forming in his mind. He needed to ground the hunter. He just had to survive long enough to try. Smoke coiled from the console, stinging his eyes. The shuttle was dying around them. Kalen fought the controls, guiding the crippled vessel into a deep, narrow ravine, its shadow swallowing them whole. He set it down with a jarring crunch that rattled his teeth. The engines died with a final, pathetic whine. Silence descended, broken only by the ping of cooling metal and the ragged sound of his own breathing. They were trapped. Elwes huddled by his chair, her light a steady, fearful amber. He ran a systems check. The drive was dead. Weapons were offline. Shields were gone. They had power for life support and little else. The Threnodian ship, its sleek form blotting out the sky above the ravine, began its descent. It was over. No, it wasn't. He looked at Elwes, at the trust in her wide eyes. He had pulled her from the sand. He would not hand her back. His gaze swept the shuttle's interior, landing on the industrial laser cutter mounted near the airlock. It was for slicing core samples, not for combat. But it could cut. And this canyon was made of stone. "Stay here," he said, meeting her eyes. He projected a feeling of safety, of a plan as best he could. She gave a slow, uncertain pulse of light in return. He moved fast. He grabbed the heavy laser cutter and a spare power cell. He jammed on his helmet and cycled the airlock. The external silence was profound. He scrambled up the steep ravine wall, his boots dislodging showers of loose scree. On the rim, he had a perfect view of the Threnodian ship, now settled on its landing struts 200 meters away. Its hull gleamed, impervious to his pathetic small arms fire. He didn't plan to shoot it. He placed his shuttle's emergency distress beacon on the rim, activating it. A bright, rhythmic flash. The perfect bait. Then he positioned the laser cutter on a rocky outcrop, aiming it not at the ship, but at the base of a massive, precariously balanced rock spire that overhung the landing site. He rigged the trigger to a motion sensor from his toolkit, set its activation radius, and ran. He was barely back inside the shuttle, his heart hammering against his ribs, when the airlock cycled. On the external camera feed he saw them. 2 Threnodian warriors emerged from their ship. They were tall, clad in form-fitting armor that seemed to drink the light, and they moved with a chilling, fluid grace. They saw the flashing beacon and advanced, their movements synchronized and lethal. "Come on," Kalen whispered, his hand hovering over the manual trigger override. "Just a little closer." The lead warrior reached the beacon. It bent to examine it. The motion sensor registered the movement. The laser cutter came to life with a searing blue beam. It didn't touch the warriors. It sliced horizontally, a clean, hot line through the base of the rock spire. For a terrifying second, nothing happened. Then, with a deep, groaning roar that vibrated through the shuttle's hull, the entire spire sheared off from the canyon wall. It fell in an avalanche of shattered stone, a tidal wave of rock that crashed down upon the Threnodian ship and the 2 warriors. The sound was apocalyptic. Dust billowed up, a thick, choking cloud that blotted out the sky. When it finally began to settle, the view was transformed. The Threnodian ship was buried, its hull cracked and crumpled under millions of tons of rock. The hunters were gone. Kalen let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He had done it. He had saved her. He turned to Elwes, a weary smile forming on his lips. Then a new sound cut through the settling dust. A low, pulsing chime. An emergency beacon. It wasn't his. It was coming from the buried Threnodian ship. An automated distress call, broadcasting on a loop to anyone listening. He had won the battle, but he had just announced their location to the entire Threnodian fleet. 3 days. The air in the shuttle grew stale, the recyclers struggling. Kalen rationed their remaining water and nutrient pastes, giving LSS the larger share. Her health, miraculously, continued to improve. The gray, stone-like patches on her skin had receded, replaced by the healthy, velvety texture. Her light patterns were stronger, more complex. The crude human intervention, combined with her own fighting spirit, was working. She was beating the plague. He taught her simple games, stacking ration cubes, drawing shapes in the dust on the console. She learned quickly, her intelligence sparkling in her eyes and in the playful, curious patterns she projected. In quiet moments she would reach out and touch his hand, and a flood of images would come. Her true name LSS. A memory of a Threnodian female with deep, violet light. Her grandmother, Vairi, who held her and sang to her in pulses of light. A feeling of home, not of sterile metal but of warm, crystalline spires. And a deep, sorrowful disagreement. Her family had opposed the culling. They had argued for compassion, for research. They had lost. The Threnodian emergency beacon continued its monotonous, metallic chirp outside, a countdown to their doom. Kalen had accepted it. He had saved her once. He had given her these few extra days of life. That had to be enough. On the 4th day the light in the ravine dimmed. A shadow fell over the shuttle. Kalen looked up. A new ship was settling into the space above the canyon. It was massive, dwarfing the first. Its design was different. Older, more organic, with sweeping curves and crystalline structures that glowed with a soft, internal light. It was not a predator. It was a leviathan of peace. LYSS's reaction was immediate. A burst of pure, golden light, a wave of relief and joy so powerful it felt like a physical warmth in the small cabin. She pressed herself against the viewport, her patterns flashing a rapid, complex sequence. A ramp extended from the great ship. A delegation emerged. At its head was an elder Threnodian, her back slightly stooped, her own light patterns a deep, calm indigo. OSS projected the image of her grandmother, Vairi. Kalen, his heart in his throat, opened the airlock and stepped out, his hands raised and empty. The elder Vairi approached. She carried no weapon. A small device on her wrist projected translated words into the air between them, the tones gentle and measured. Human, the voice was ancient, wise, and carried a profound weight of sorrow. We intercepted the beacon. We also intercepted the tale your ship's black box has been broadcasting. The tale of a human who defied the silence of the dunes. She looked past him to where LYSS stood trembling in the airlock. The joy radiating from the child was a tangible force. For generations the sand plague has been our great sorrow. Our answer was purity, severity. We cut away the sick to preserve the whole. We believed it was the only way. Her dark eyes returned to Kalen. You have shown us another. You fought for one small, impure life. You used simple tools, not advanced science. You used compassion. A concept my people have forgotten in our pursuit of perfection. Vairi gestured to the massive ship. LSS's survival is a miracle. Your defense of her is a revolution. You have shown us that our strength does not lie in being flawless, but in how we care for our flawed. She bowed her head, a deep, formal gesture. We do not offer rescue, human Kalen. We ask for an alliance. We have much to learn from your kind. Your weakness is the greatest strength we have ever witnessed. Kalen stood in the shadow of the great ship, the gritty wind of Xylos tugging at his suit. He looked at Elwes, who was now running toward her grandmother, her light blazing like a tiny star against the vast, indifferent dunes. He had come to this dead world for rocks and data. He was leaving having planted a seed that would change 2 civilizations. He had not just saved a life, he had bridged the void between stars. The silence of Xylos was no longer a bomb but a memory. It was now filled with the resonance of a new beginning.